Welcome to Career Practitioner Conversations. This podcast is presented by the National Career Development Association. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Melissa Venable, NCDA Director of Professional Development. And as you may already know about NCDA, much of the work of the association is done through its volunteer committees. And this episode features a conversation with the co-chairs of NCDA's Government Relations Committee. So I'm here today with Shelby McIntyre and Elle O'Flaherty, and I'm excited to have this conversation. Shelby, would you introduce yourself first?
Hi, thank you for tuning in. My name is Shelby. I am a full-time career counselor at Pasadena City College, a community college in Southern California, Los Angeles County. I co-chair the NCDA Government Relations Committee. I'm also past president of the California Career Development Association. So shout out to those state CDA leaders as well, and very happy to be here.
Thanks so much for having us. My name is Elle O'Flaherty. I am the founder of Interlace Solutions, which is a coaching firm that's nationwide. We do career, executive, and ADHD coaching. And I am lucky to be co-chair with Shelby of the Government Relations Committee, and just really excited to talk to you all about it.
Thank you both so much for being here, Shelby and Elle. Thank you for your service to the association and for your leadership in this particular committee. And your bios. You're like many NCDA members. I think you've got lots of hats and lots of plates spinning, and so we appreciate you taking time to share your work with this committee with us today. So let's dig in. Tell us a little bit about how each of you became interested in government relations work.
I can start. I absolutely love being a career counselor. I love working one-on-one with students and working as a teacher of a career planning class. But one of the consistent challenges I face is helping one person at a time or a group of students at a time tackle these massive systemic challenges, right? A big thing in Southern California is that, a fraction of my students are undocumented, and their future licensing, their future work prospects are very impacted by governmental decisions and legislation. And so I realized that while I do love the one-on-one work, sometimes I feel pretty powerless, and I feel like I'm kind of helping one person at a time at the end of a pipeline. And I want to be a more active advocate earlier on in that pipeline to try to help for opportunities for career development to be a little bit more accessible, and for people to not face systemic limitations as much as is possible, right? And so that's what originally got me interested. And since I've been part of our bipartisan committee, getting to learn more about all the different issues, and also even things that sometimes I take for granted, like professional development funding, and making sure that different practitioners in different spaces have access to that, because it's so vital. And so that's just a little bit of what gets me into it. What keeps me going is just that itch to do more, and that seeing these challenges that our students, our clients face every day, and knowing that government can play a big role in ameliorating some of these challenges. What about you, Elle?
Well, I have to say that I started out life, the first 20 years of my career was as an attorney with the federal government. And just seeing how impactful it can be when groups are organized and thoughtful in their approach to advocating for things, I knew it was critical for NCDA to continue its effort in this area. I really, like Shelby, I see the connection to job opportunities and education as an equity issue. And of course, I work as an ADHD coach with a population that has a disability. And so I see how important this is and how much we as career development professionals impact, both our client and also our communities. And so one of the priorities for Shelby and I taking over this year was to make sure that we were really thoughtfully positioning NCDA on the areas we're focusing on and how we're advocating.
Fantastic. I love that both of you shared how so much that you do with clients and students really can link back to policy and procedure, and how important it is to have a voice. So thank you both again for bringing your very different kinds of expertise and experiences to the conversation. Can you tell me a little bit more? Maybe Elle, you want to start with this one, kind of what you're doing in the committee right now, things that you've done recently.
Absolutely. Well, when we took over, Shelby and I talked about it, and both of us really crave organization. And so, one of our first priorities, absolutely, was to create NCDA's platform, if you will, our policy platform and our focus areas. We have successfully written that and had both committee and board approval. So it's now in place for the organization. We have 11 main buckets that we focus on, and I just like to highlight those now. One of the things that we are always looking for in the committee is new energy and new blood. And so, if anyone listening is interested, we're a very open and fun committee, like all the NCDA committees. And we would love to have people get more involved. And so, the policy areas that we are highlighting are employment opportunities and job market adaptability, student career services, and that's students of every age. Professional accreditation and certification standards. We really believe that NCDA is the gold standard in career development certification, and we want to make sure everyone knows that. Access to professional development, workforce development and education, equal opportunity and inclusion, special populations, including veterans, individuals with disabilities, re-entering formerly incarcerated individuals, mental health and career development, funding for research and innovation. Frankly, one of the really outstanding things that NCDA can offer policymakers is that we are a research organization and we have such good information to share from an entirely nonpartisan point of view. Then small business development for some of our private sector practitioners and private practice. And finally, data privacy and ethical compliance, which of course is important to all of us. So in order to start pushing forward and advocating for some of that, we also created work streams. So we have large buckets of that we are asking members to lead that we are working on together. The first one being, of course, co-chairs, which Shelby and I lead, our state coordinators, which reach out to their own states and we help train them and through them help their own state level advocacy. Policy, which is where we're looking at critical legislation, federal legislation and federal rulemaking. Liaison to other organizations, our communication to make sure that members know what we're doing and what we're delivering on their behalf. Hill Day, which is May 14th, so right around when this will come out. And that's exciting where we get to lobby and advocate in person to members of Congress. Then finally, awards, and we're a little unique in that our group, we get to select our own award winner in conjunction with the awards committee. And finally, the conference, where we always both hold a meeting of our committee where everyone is welcome. So please come if you're interested. That's actually how I got involved with the committee. And then also we give a presentation on advocacy and how we can get involved in policymaking.
That is a lot of work. So again, you're illustrating what I said in the introduction about just how much of the work of NCDA falls to these committees, such that you all are on, and you're all. I want to stress again how you are all volunteers. Shelby, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think I can imagine myself listening to all those like impressive areas that we're focusing on and just feeling like, oh my God, that is a lot. And also like, I know nothing about legislation. And I think you heard our backgrounds, right? I have never been a community organizer. I've never been involved in politics on a systemic level other than just trying to be informed and voting. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about our committee is that we help each other and that we have different levels of knowledge and expertise. We also partner with a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. to help give us some insider information. And so what that list that Elle read first of our policy areas is what we do to help communicate with them about what are our key issues, right? Because that's the biggest thing to start with is what are the things that NCDA stands for and cares about? And a constant conversation that I don't think will ever end in our committee, and I think that's a good thing, is what is the scope of NCDA's government relations, right? Is this within our scope? Does this impact career development, delivery of services, career practitioners? Every issue affects our clients, right? So how do we draw that line? How do we define that scope? And so if you're listening and you're like wondering about that, that is a ongoing kind of conversation that we always kind of negotiate and determine and really while maintaining NCDA's bipartisan stance while also our, diversity, inclusion, and cultural diversity initiatives and cultural inclusion committee, right? Trying to, you heard us talk about special populations and equal opportunity. So we're kind of always walking these fine lines and really trying to advocate in a way that is bipartisan and in a way that does move the needle forward and in a way that welcomes people that aren't experts at this. And I just really wanted to emphasize that because I think when Elle and I are partnered as co-chairs, we're really well matched because she'll do a lot of that educating of me and understanding like the timeline that things work in Washington. And I'll be like, okay, let's get this back to our members. How are we communicating back so that we kind of keep that ebb and flow? And I think it's such a good balance of making our committee approachable and also making sure that all of our members feel like they can make a difference, even if they aren't experts or have a background in anything law or government or organizing.
I think I'm actually the only committee member who has a legal background or who has worked in Washington. So Shelby's absolutely right. And she has really, really been instrumental in leading the charge on this interesting debate on which legislation it is critical that we support. Our meetings are really fun and dynamic for that reason, because pretty much every meeting we talk about specific pieces of legislation and the committee votes yes or no on if we want to have a official NCDA position on it. So it's really neat, and it's a lot of communication and sort of banter back and forth, which I think makes us a little bit unique potentially.
Now, I love how both of you stressed that this is ongoing work. So this is not a project that it's got a timeline. We check the box, we got it done, put it on the shelf, and move on to something else. This is something that requires everybody to be paying attention to and staying up to date on and being willing to have the conversations. So this sort of brings us to my next question for you both, which is, what can career development professionals do, whether they're a member of the government relations committee or not, to become more involved with advocacy work? Are there some action kind of steps that folks can take?
Well, that's a really great question. And one that we've really been focusing on is getting more state level action. By the time things bubble up to the federal level, generally they've been happening in one or more states for a while. And so hearing about some of the things going on in the states and members telling us what's happening so that they are paying attention to their state and local policymakers to see anything that might be coming. Also, some of our members have written and advocated for their own state level bills, which is pretty amazing. And it has made really impactful change. So, some of the great things that members can do is absolutely, as professionals in this space, we have such a strong and important role to play in advocacy. So, taking a look at what's impacting your clients and what might be helpful, maybe what laws could change or what programs could be implemented, is huge. And our committee is here absolutely to serve as a resource and help people do that. So you're not on your own. We will absolutely give you information and templates and whatever you need to support you. We actually have state level representatives in our sort of state representative area of our committee. And then we also have people who have come up through that and now want to work at the federal and state level. So really just coming to us with what you're seeing on the ground and with your clients and maybe brainstorming some ideas of how to make improvements. That's the most classic grassroots way to advocate for success change. And Shelby, I know that you've done a lot of work in this area and with getting states involved. So maybe you'd like to share too.
Yeah, I did want to share before I was a co-chair, I was a state co-coordinator, which is kind of a role within our committee that's really big on communication to the states on both, like Elle said, what's happening federally, but also more importantly, like how you can make an impact at the state level. And it's been such a learning experience. We have such a great state co-coordinator team right now as well. This year, they're actually doing quarterly meetings, and those meetings are really just to share best practices, share challenges, talk about what has it been like? What have you seen? We had one of our members in Ohio do a local Hill Day in the Ohio legislature. So just huge things happening. And I really want to shout out our state team. And we also just expanded our state team to our first international member who went to college in the US and decided that they wanted to still be involved in US policy and information and government relations. So they decided, hey, why don't I kind of help with the communication to the states? And so it's just really wonderful to see our committee kind of grow in these unique areas. I also want to shout out my colleague, Dr. Cheryl Love from California, who's been recognized for her diversity work by NCDA. She presented with me at the Diversity Symposium last conference on expanding the scope of career development advocacy stance. And we talked about kind of a spectrum between awareness to individual action to collective action. And wherever you are on that spectrum is a good place to start. So I think Elle did a really good job of talking about starting with brainstorming and what's impacting your local group. And part of that can also just start with awareness on a state level. Are you reading news about laws that are passing? Are you engaged at the primary level, at the election level? And that's like the awareness piece, then the individual action piece. Individual action can go beyond voting, can be writing an op-ed about an issue that your clients are experiencing. It can be donation, it can be leadership in your workplace or community, and it can also just be engaging in conversations like we're doing now. And then collective action is something that we do with NCDA and the state level stuff, where when you get people organized, you can really have a bigger impact on your policymakers. But there's so many ways to get involved. It really can start as just your vote or just you starting to have a monthly newsletter, then maybe a weekly newsletter, maybe a daily, however much your bandwidth is, your capacity is. We do just want to kind of encourage everyone that these conversations are spaces for career development practitioners to get involved.
And just to add on to what Shelby said, she made a really good point. We as a committee have a weekly newsletter that we send out to our state contacts. Anyone is welcome to join that newsletter. It gives you great real-time updates on what's going on in Capitol Hill. And so please feel free to reach out to either us or to sign up on the website, because we would love to distribute that more widely.
Oh, thank you. And I will put the links to those resources in the show notes for this episode. So if you're listening and you want to find out more, that'd be a good place to go to get started. So much going on. How many people are involved in the Government Relations Committee right now?
We're a committee of, it varies a little bit, but it's more between 10 and 15. One of the really exciting things about our committee is that Shelby and I, kind of took the ball and ran with it. And we've really been making a lot of changes, and it's very dynamic just at the moment. So our members are able to make very fulsome contributions, for instance, to setting NCDA's policy platform, which we just did. So it's pretty cool in that people are highly involved and coming up with new ideas of how we can improve. One of the areas that we really want to expand into, and to my knowledge, NCDA hasn't worked there yet, is with the federal rulemaking process. For those of us who are familiar with it, the legislation is usually very broad. And so the law is broad, but where the rubber hits the road is really with the regulations and the rules and how these laws are implemented. So we are hoping to get much more involved with the Department of Labor, the Department of Education, USDA, and others who have some of these big programs. And so we would love help with that. And anyone who is really interested, please, again, reach out to us.
Oh, well, thank you. That's a pretty small team, I think, given the list of things that you are all involved in and things that you're planning. But it's great to know that folks that are listening that want to get involved in the committee can do so, but also that you're there to kind of help brainstorm and consult with someone who just has an issue they want to find out more about. So to lead us into kind of wrapping up here, for folks who are interested in finding out more but aren't ready to jump in as volunteers, where can they find out more about what's happening?
Well, we actually are going to have quite a presence at the conference. We also always have a web presence, so feel free to visit our NCDA Government Relations webpage. It's newly updated with some of our latest info. The 27th in particular is going to be like Government Relations Day. No, there's lots of other great things happening that day, but that is when the committee meetings meet. So from 12 to 1:30, we are going to be having a committee meeting, and anyone is welcome to join that. So you don't have to already be part of the committee. You can sit in, and we do use that as like a recruitment. That's actually how Elle and I met and joined the committee a couple of years ago at the conference. And then actually right after that, from 1:50 to 3, we are having a national session where we are a presentation where we call it our national session, where our lobbyists and us talk about what we've done over the years, what the latest legislative issues are and government relations issues are. And then we're actually really excited this year. Sarah Jantosh, one of our state co-coordinators, is actually doing a session called Creating Spaces for Advocacy with State CDAs. And that's also on the 27th, right after our national session at 3:30. So do keep your eye out for that, whether it's state advocacy or national or just joining our committee session. Any one of those you're welcome to come to. Keep your eye out on the conference program. Again, that's June 27th at the NCDA Global Conference.
Oh, thank you for that. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in person in San Diego and to hearing more about that session. So thanks for putting all that together. Thank you both again for your commitment to NCDA and to being advocates for the career development field. It's been a real pleasure talking with you both, and I hope we can catch up with you again soon.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for having us, Melissa.